So Pusha T, who is a famous rapper and what a lot of people would deem financially successful or maybe even rich, did an interview and he was stating how non-emergency medical transport was one of the most lucrative businesses that he had. Now that had everybody in a frenzy. People, of course, naturally want to figure out how do you get this started, and that's why you're here, honey. I am here to help you. In this video, my goal is to let you know how to start this business, the different certifications you're going to need to start this business, how much money you may need to start this business. Welcome to the Nurse Report, where I give you a report in the form of a free course on different healthcare industries. And no, you do not have to be a nurse or in the healthcare field to start this business. My name is Latasha, aka the Legendary Nurse. So let's go ahead and get started. First and foremost, what is non-emergency medical transport? It's literally what it says in the title. It's going to be transporting patients to doctor's appointments, hospitals, and different things like that. But it's a specific group that you're going to serve. So you're going to serve the elderly, dialysis patients, patients on Medicaid, disabled patients. So basically, what you're doing is you're taking these people back and forth to their appointments. So we're going to talk about how to make this very lucrative. But before we even get started on how to get paid, honey, you got to start the business, okay? So let's talk about the different certifications and things you're going to need to start the business. So let's talk about starting a business in general. If you're starting any business, you're going to need an LLC. And some of these points I'm going to state for the state of Ohio because that's the state I'm in, but you can do a simple Google search to see where you can get this specific thing from in your state. So when I'm saying a LLC, our Ohio Secretary of State, that is where you can get your LLC from if you plan on registering as a LLC. Your EIN, this is your employment identification number. You can get an EIN from the IRS.gov, okay? Do not pay nobody to get you an EIN. If you pay somebody to get you an EIN, child, we gonna fight because it is for the free at irs.gov. Now there are specific hours, it's like business hours that you can apply for your EIN, but like I said, literally just go to irs.gov and follow the prompts, okay? Now one of the biggest purchases is going to obviously be your van, and this van is going to be very important, so you don't want to try to cheap out on it, okay? So you want to try to make sure that you have a very reliable van, but you can buy one or you can lease one. So different places that you can buy one or lease one is a place called Mobility Works. I am not sponsored or connected with any of these places. This is just for me doing research on some of these places. It's just like when you're going to go get a car. You want to make sure that this is a working, reliable vehicle, but we'll also talk about different things that you want to make sure that this van has. So Mobility Works, Columbus Mobility Specialist, Bandigo Van Rental, Ability Van Rentals, AMS Vans, Vantage Mobility International, and Braun Ability. So a lot of these companies let you lease the van. But if you're going to lease a van, remember that's basically like getting another car note, and that's adding a bill on to a business. One of the best business advices that I have ever received is start as low as possible and work your way up, meaning keeping your expenses low as possible and then adding more on. You got to remember, if you lease that van starting out, you're automatically putting yourself in debt. So not only am I giving y'all these free courses, but I'm keeping it real for you. And when you sign a lease with anything, you have to keep it for a number of years. So I always say, when you're writing this stuff down, make sure you acknowledge, okay, either I'm going to buy or I'm going to lease the van. And if I lease the van, I got to make sure that if you plan on getting staff, if you plan on your licenses and insurance and things like that, you want to make sure that you can cover all that along with the leasing price. See, I'm not about to be one of those people that get on here and be like, yeah, you can make 30K a month. Da, da, da. Yes, you can make 30K a month, but there's expenses that come with that also. Okay, moving right along. If you see me looking down, it's because I want to give you the specific facts. I have a whole workbook that's written out for you if you want to go ahead and download it so you can read this workbook along with listening to the video. The link is in the bio. So when you're getting this van, not only do you want to make sure obviously like the engine and things working, but you want to make sure that it meets ADA requirements. So what is the ADA requirement? If you're transporting disabled people, it has to have a wheelchair lift or a ramp for people that's immobile, so people that is in a wheelchair. Different states require a certain amount of pounds that it takes for this ramp. So most require 600 pounds. You want to call somewhere that is specific, that rents out or sells to non-emergency transport companies, because they can also help you with those requirements. Typically, the lift is supposed to be able to lift 600 pounds. However, if you're working with a company that specifically makes ADA vehicles that meet the requirements of ADA, then they're going to be able to tell you, hey, these are the ADA requirements. So what does ADA stand for? Just so we know, this is Americans with Disability. Obviously, they would want the vehicle to be in compliance with patients that have disabilities. So if somebody is riding in the car, and I actually have for my home care agency, people that this has happened to, that got in a car accident, they were in the car and literally say the van got into an accident and child, they flew up, okay? Not blew out the window, but they flew up. And this is because that vehicle did not have wheelchair securement system, okay? What is this? This means that the wheelchair is secured. It has to be anchored to the floor. I don't know if you've ever, like, if you had a client and you got them on the bus, you see one of the first things like the big transport companies do, they literally walk over and they literally secure the resident. You can have 4 tied down tracks, locking 4 tracks, whatever it is, making sure that these wheelchairs are locked down to the ground, okay? The passenger safety requirements. So this is like lap belts, shoulder belts, and different seatbelt requirements. Now, so not only do the chair got to be locked down, but the patient got to be locked down. But anyways, you want to make sure that there is patient safety restraints like lap belts, etc. Obviously, we want this space to have adequate space because you're going to be picking up multiple people. So I want you to think about it like this, just like a bus stop. The bus does not go from downtown all the way to the suburbs and then with one person in a car. Even though they like to call this the Uber of medical transport, baby, this ain't Uber, okay? It might be, what is it, Uber passenger? What is it when it's multiple people in the car? It has to be multiple people in the car. So if you're new, so when you know you're going when you know you have multiple clients, that is how you're going to figure out your route that you're going to be doing. So we'll get into that a little bit later. I said all that to say, you want to make sure that you have adequate space because you want multiple people in the car. And this is average, like this is normal. My home health client, say she has an appointment, we know that, okay, say if we're meeting her at the doctor's office and I'd be like, okay, girl, I'll see you there. I know she's not gonna be there for at least an hour and a half because there's multiple people in there and they have to make multiple stops. And also that is why they tell you it's going to be at least, you need to schedule all your appointments at least an hour to an hour and a half because you want to think of this as a bus. We're dropping multiple people off. And that is how you're also going to maximize your income. Girl, why do I keep doing this? Let me relax, okay? All right, so you also want to make sure because it can get slippery, rain, snow, sleet, all those type of things. Ramps and floors must have non-slip materials. Once again, these are all things that the company will be able to tell you, but you also want to make sure that you're checking for when you get this vehicle. And more than anything, make sure the vehicle work, okay? Make sure this engine ain't about to break down next year, okay? All right, so you also want to make sure that you get your US DOT certification. This is your identification, and this is through the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. I never knew what FMCSA stood for. Okay, so this is a part of the United States Department of Transportation. So what is that? This is where they watch you. They're going to watch your vehicle inspections, your crash reports, different things like that. It is basically your ID tracking for your transport company. Basically, they're tracking you to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do for this specific business and this specific van. So a lot of times, honestly, this is only needed. It could depend on your state, though. This is typically needed when you are getting compensation. You're carrying more than 8 people. So let's talk about and I know everybody wants to get to the finances and things like that, but I always tell people before you can get to finances, you got to talk about the important things in a business. Okay, you got your certifications and everything like that. And honestly, starting a business is the easy part. How are you going to run this business? So there are some key things that you have to focus on. So you have to focus on the demographic that you are going to target. Like I said, dialysis patients are really good patients to target because these type of patients, they need transport multiple times, at least multiple times a week. So not just one time a week for a doctor's appointment, they need it multiple times a week. So dialysis patients, where are dialysis patients? You can find them in nursing homes, you can find them in assisted livings. So what are we going to do? We're going to reach out to these places. Starting out, unless you already have contacts with these different places, it might be hard to get your foot in the door. But I would suggest doing things like not just calling. You're going to have to hit the pavement. You're gonna have to get out there. You're gonna have to pass out cards. And even if you can't get like a contract with a nursing home or a contract with a hospital or a contract with an assisted living just yet, what I would do is specifically start targeting people, like individuals. So I would get on Facebook and I would put in the word dialysis Cincinnati. And people would type, oh, today was my people tell their business on Facebook, okay? People tell their business everywhere. But honestly, a lot of times on Facebook, I people sleep on Facebook so bad, okay? And I'm just throwing different marketing tactics out there, but you can get on Facebook, type in dialysis, type in your city, and look at the people that have tagged these different things, right? Reach out to them professionally from your business page. But hey, we're a company. This is what we charge. We accept Medicaid. We accept this. You have to get your foot. If you don't know people, you got to get out there. But like I said, individually, I would target these people, and I would also target, like I said, nursing homes, hospitals, dialysis clinics. If you don't, just calling, you're not going to be able to get in contact with nobody. Once again, I would use that trick. Do anybody know somebody that knows somebody who is a director of nursing at a nursing home, who is a director of nursing at assisted living? Shoot, even the assistant director, who is the administrator here. Walk in, introduce yourself. Can I speak to the director of nursing? Can I have 2 minutes of your time? Okay, no. Well, here, let me go ahead and give you this pamphlet. Networking is key when it comes to any business. You're going to have to go to events. You're going to have to put yourself out there in healthcare events. Hi, I own this transport company. This is our rate. This is what we accept. Different things like that. So you got to put yourself out there in multiple different ways if you want to get these clients, okay? So, like I said, starting out, if you're going to be the driver, obviously you would save money. But if you plan on hiring someone, understand that is going to be an expense, okay? And if you don't plan on hiring somebody, obviously you're going to be the driver. But there's also other jobs that you have to do. Like, for an example, you got to make sure that you know that you come up with the routes, okay? Now, when you grow, you can hire somebody that can come up with the different routes because you'll have so many clients. So basically, you're going to get paid multiple different ways. One of the most common ways is obviously is Medicaid. So basically, what happens is this patient will have a Medicaid transportation broker, and that is who you would communicate with for your payment. So you're going to contact your broker for payments after you've done the ride, and you submit the claim for the trip claim for the ride. Then you'll receive your payment for it once it's officially approved that you actually did give them the ride. So typically they're going to pay you monthly, and typically this is per ride, per trip, right? You're getting paid per trip. So let's do some math. So let's say you had a wheelchair ride, and let's say that day you just had only 10 clients. When it comes to wheelchair rides, you can charge at least 50 plus, right? So like 50, 70, depending on your area. Let's just go with 50, which is one of the lower rates that you can charge when it comes to medical transportation, when it comes to transportation. Okay, so let's say you had 10 people, $50, and I know you're like, oh, that's only 500. That could be literally just 10 people that you did in the 4 hours. So even if you did only make that 500 that day, right? That's If you made $500 a day, that's 15,000 a month. You can get directly paid for the individual. This is not as common. That typically means somebody is uninsured. This might be for a little light. Oh, mom needs one time a month to go to the hospital, or whatever the case may be. And they would directly pay you out of pocket. Also, remember those contracts we talked about with hospitals and nursing homes and things like that. So they would pay you either weekly per ride, or monthly, and you would have a contract specifically with them. I have had somebody get a contract. So one of my friends actually got a contract with a nursing home, and they were exclusively contracted with them. And this nursing home paid them 20K a month, and literally, basically, they just had to be their transportation for everything. And this was more than medical. It was like if the residents went to Walmart, if the residents did, they literally were contracted just to work for them. It's so many different ways that you can make money in this industry. I really, really, really hope this video helped and gave you a clear mind, or at least somewhere to start on this medical transport business. Like I always say, you miss every shot that you don't take. So go ahead, take the shot. Stop thinking about it. And if you know it's for you, just do it. I will talk to you lovely, lovely people later. Bye.